Hi, everyone. I'm Loani Cesario. I'm the senior attorney here for immigration services at Drummond Advisors. I have the pleasure to be today with Aline Moreira. She's an attorney and she specializes with visas to Brazil. And she's going to clarify especially the new legislation involving immigration in Brazil. So the first question I have to you, Aline, is what are the changes that were brought by the new migration law? And could you also include the work permits here in your explanation to us, please?
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Sure, Luani. So the new migration law was established in 2017, and it replaced the foreigners statute, which was into force in 1980. So it was a really old legislation. It also considered the immigrant in Brazil as a threat to the national security. So the new migration law is a great advance in this sense. And a great change in this regard is the change in terminology, for example. The previous law referred to foreigners exactly as foreigner, which is considered a discriminatory terminology, and the new law now refers to immigrants instead. It also focuses on human rights, so the new law brings a lot of principles such as the non-discrimination and also equal rights to immigrants and Brazilian citizens. Concerning work permits, the most important novelty in this regard is the creation of the residence permit, which is a process that comes before the granting of the visa at the Brazilian consulate abroad. So if the immigrant is out of Brazil, the person has to apply for this process here, and upon approval by the Brazilian authorities, the person can go to the Brazilian consulate to have the visa stamped. On the other side, it is also possible for an immigrant who is already in Brazil under, let's say, a business status or as a tourist, to apply for a resident permit here without the necessity of going abroad to have the visa stamped.
Okay, so a lot of evolution there, a lot of good news, and a lot more structure, right?
Exactly.
Perfect. And about the types of residence permits for work purposes, what do we see now in this new legislation?
Well, the legislation brings a lot of different options for immigrants who wants to work in Brazil. The most common are the authorization for those who want to work under a local employment relationship with the Brazilian company. So this person comes to Brazil to be included on the Brazilian company's payroll. There are also two types of technical authorizations, which are applicable for migrants who come to Brazil to provide technical assistance or also transfer technology to Brazilian companies. We also have the authorization for statutory officers, which is applicable to those immigrants who will act as administrators or managers of Brazilian companies with powers to legally represent the entities before third parties. We also have an option for investors, for investors who wants to apply their own resources into a Brazilian company, an existing company or a new company. And also we have some options for those who are initiating in the careers, which are the internship, professional exchange, and also professional training authorizations.
Okay, quite a few. So always consult a professional there because I'm sure there are many details to each of these types of residence.
It is highly recommendable, yeah.
All right, and Aline, do you have any fast track kind of process like here in the US that we have the premium processing fees in Brazil?
Okay, actually, we do not have. The processing times for most authorizations is the same. It varies from 30 to 45 days after submission to the authorities. But we have this option, which is only applicable to technical authorizations. It is not a fast track procedure, but it is a process that can be approved in less time. because it is only applicable to urgent and emergent situations. And it must be duly justified, and no additional fee is required for that.
Okay, so it's quite faster than here in the US in a general sense.
Yeah.
So it is sort of a fast track itself. All right. So what about residence based on investments? Any news on that? Anything that this legislation created?
Yes, indeed. As I mentioned, there is the authorization of residence for individual foreign investors, those immigrants who want to invest their own resources in Brazil, creating a business in Brazil or in an existing business. And for that, it is necessary to present a business plan explaining how the money will be applied in Brazil, how many jobs will be generated with that, and the social impact of the investment. But the new option is an authorization of residence based on acquisition of real estate in Brazil. But there are some specific rules for that, including the amount of money that has to be invested and the location of the real estate in Brazil.
All right, so it actually resembles the golden visa that everybody uses in Europe. So that's very good news for Brazil.
It is an additional option. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's continue with our questions. We're almost done. Could you tell us a little bit of special processes based on nationality?
Yeah, we have some processes here in Brazil that are based on the migrant's nationality, most of them based on bilateral or regional agreements. And the most famous is the Mercosur agreement, which is applicable to citizens of the bloc. So a citizen of one country is able to live and work legally in another country of the bloc by means of a much simpler procedure, immigration terms. Just as an example, the countries that are currently under this agreement are Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, Bolivia, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador.
Okay, so great news for those citizens when they're willing to move to Brazil. They must have a much simpler process, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And finally, so what about main Brazilian documents that these immigrants or migrants would want to require or can request when they're there in Brazil?
Yeah, the documents that an immigrant has to apply in Brazil depend on the type of authorization they have, actually. But just as an example, the most common of them is the REM, which is the migrant's identity card in Brazil. As soon as the authorization of residence is approved, the migrant has to go to the Brazilian consulate abroad and have the visa stamped. And upon entrance in Brazil, this immigrant has to go to the federal police in order to register and then obtain this RNM number. And in a few months, the RNM card will be also issued. We also have the CPF, which is a tax document, but it is also used for several different purposes, such as opening a banking account or even obtaining a mobile phone line. And also we have the CTPS, which is a work booklet. This is mostly for those who will be hired in Brazil as local employees, because this is the document the employers use to register the migrants into the payroll. And also we have, finally, the driver's license. And the process for obtaining this document in Brazil will also depend on the nationality, because there are some agreements in force. So we have to analyze on a case-by-case basis.
Perfect. I feel very well informed and a bit knowledgeable on Brazilian visas now. Thank you for that, Aline.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure to have you. And everyone, please stay tuned. Thank you for watching this video, and also check our channels. We have YouTube channels with a lot more videos like this. We have social media, and so please follow us.